Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching GEEKCASTER, everything sci-fi, fantasy, and geek culture commentary. I'm Michael, and today we have in the virtual studio
Phoenix Sparks,
Dayveonne, the one Bussey,
Eric the Smoke Moran.
That's right, we got Eric the Smoke Moran in the studio with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. You're watching GEEKCASTER. So, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about cosplay. We're going to talk about film production, writing, producing. But the elephant in the room, what is DC doing? It's looking good. It's sounding good. It's like they're pouring honey all across the sidewalk, all the way to the movie theater, and all we got to do is lick it up. Shout out to DC Comics and Warner Brothers. That's a good way to describe it, right?
Yeah. I'm going to say it in a nutshell. Or as I like to say, trust the process. Trust the process. Let's keep it real. You know, the thing is that, and I'm going to jump right in on this. Like, right. As someone who has been a DC character for DC Comics, not just in cosplay, but in comic book lore. I'm actually a DC comic book character. Okay. For those who don't know, now you know. A little history there. But I'm actually a DC comic book character. But I have to say this. You know, it was interesting when Man of Steel came out all the way back, we were like 2013. You know how people were like, oh, it's not my Superman. It's not my Christopher Reeve. It's not. When Michael Keaton became Batman, I'm going even further. How dare they make Michael Keaton, before internet, how dare they make Michael Keaton Batman? But what I find amazing is now they've embraced Michael Keaton is like the standard, the gold standard of Batman. Right. And then everyone else to follow. Man. With Henry Cavill, it's amazing how now people are like, oh, you know, when the reaction when Henry Cavill, spoilers for those who haven't seen it, shows up on Black Adam as Superman, and people went nuts. You know, the people's reaction. And then when they said we're letting go Henry Cavill, people were like, oh my God, what are you doing? Oh, you know, James Gunn is out of his mind, and people not doing their proper research. You know, hey, it was before James Gunn even came on board. You know, right. And even though Henry got screwed, there was always that possibility of him coming back. It's just there was never a deal set on the table. Right. With that being said, what I find amazing is right now, for people like myself, I'm like, hey, I'm trusting Gunn's process. You got the Authority, you got Superman Legacy, you got Batman Brave and the Bold, you got Swamp Thing, you got Creature Commandos. Now, and most importantly, one of my all-time favorite books. Again, I've been a fan since the '90s. The Authority. I never thought I would ever hear the Authority coming out. But a lot of people that don't know, they're like, oh, well, you know, it's not my Henry Cavill. It's not this, it's not that. And I'm like, but trust the process. I guarantee you, when these movies come out, and if God willing, I know if James Gunn has been doing well on his track record like he has been, these movies do good, I guarantee you everybody's going to be like, oh, it's the be-all to end-all. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. It's the greatest superhero movie ever. So that's why I'm just sitting back like, I'm eating popcorn watching the fanboys lose their mind over, oh, I can't believe it. I'm just like, yeah, y'all go ahead and lose your mind, you know. And then watch, when the first Superman movie comes out, everybody's going to be wanting to cosplay the new Superman. I guarantee it, you know. Same with Batman and Damian. I mean, come on. So I had to throw my 2 cents in on that, you know.
No, definitely. There was a huge backlash. I think there was almost a backlash for every person to play Batman except for George Clooney. There wasn't that much of a backlash.
Right, because nobody complained about George Clooney until we actually saw the film, and we're like,
but I don't even blame Clooney. It's the writers, you know.
Right.
And then Schumacher even came out and said, "Hey, I apologize for Batman and Robin. I apologize for that movie." And I'm sitting back, and I'm watching this, and I'm just like, hey, I don't blame Clooney. Clooney was just like, hey, I'm just Bruce Wayne. I'm in the costume. I'm Bruce Wayne. I mean, Val Kilmer did a great job to me, in my viewpoint. I thought he did a great job as Batman. Again, it's the writing. To me, Batman and Robin reminded me of a modern day version of the campy Adam West. They just modernized it. That's how I had to go into watching Batman and Robin.
Right.
You know, because otherwise than that, I would just have to be like.
Well, you know that they wanted to. The problem between the director / the writers and the studio, they wanted that to be basically a big toy commercial. So every time they tried to darken things up and give it some meat, they're like, well, can we just drive the car a little bit? Well, can we just... And then everything started falling apart from there.
You know it's bad when Bruce Timm and them did the Batman animated series, and they did a spoof on Joel Schumacher when they did Night of the Bat, where they did all these different versions of Batman on the animated series. They did a segment where Joel is supposed to be these kids, and he's like, oh, Batman, and his little fancy leather, and he's wearing this thing, and he's like, all right, Joel. And I love it because I'm like, yeah, that was a little jab at Joel Schumacher. So I like I said again, it's our fandom, man. It's why we love what we love in comic books. Think about it like this: when people were losing their mind that what we call it was going to become Batman, sparkly vampire becoming Batman, and it ended up being.
I was wondering. I was like, come on, man.
Think about that. That and Ben Affleck. When Ben Affleck were announced, people were putting death threats and all, and then Ben Affleck, boom, he came in there. He brought it in hard. Then you got. I called him the sparkly Batman, the sparkly vampire, and he comes in and he kills it. So again,
I have to give it to him. I have to give sparkly.
Well,
even when Heath Ledger was cast as Batman, I remember when he got cast as Joker. I'm sorry, not Batman. When he got cast as Joker, again, you didn't think anybody could set this bar since Jack Nicholson, and then Heath Ledger comes along and he sets the bar even higher. I'm like, so again, it's our fandom.
Since you touched it, I gotta ask everybody, and I know Phoenix Sparks is like the biggest Batman lover on this. Don't even say fan; she's a Batman lover. What did everybody think of the Batman? I had mixed emotions.
I liked it.
I had mixed emotions.
I remember losing my mind in the movie theater and hearing the music play, the soundtrack play. The narration, it was like a live-action comic book as I'm reading. Because I'm a hardcore Batman fan. I've done at least 12 different versions of Batman as a cosplayer. And I'm telling you, as I'm watching the movie, it's like reading a live-action comic book come to life.
Interesting.
With the music, his narration, year one, that was just going through my head, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. So
I think it's one of the best intros to the Batman franchises, as far as besides that Heath Ledger intro was just like one of the best in just movie history, period. But as far as painting Gotham City as a character, that's the one thing that I do like about the Batman. There's a lot of things I don't. I like the Penguin, great performance, and that intro really, this is the world that we're in. Like, it really painted that picture. I don't know if you guys felt that.
What do you think? What do you think, Phoenix?
I totally agree. I love the on-screen contrast along with the off-screen drama. But I will be a little biased here and say, as much as I love the new production, I still really like I think it was Dark Knight Rises being filmed here in my hometown. I kind of wish they would have filmed it in my hometown again because we have the big pointy buildings. So.
Oh yeah, because it was filmed in your town and my town.
Yes, exactly. But no, I really enjoyed the soundtrack, the way the actors portrayed the roles. I thought it was great. So. Yeah.
Now I will say this: I love the Batman. Well, let's call it. The French would call it Le Batman. Okay, but I will say. Why you laughing?
Le Batman. Le Batman.
The
Batman.
Batman.
Le Batman.
The Batman.
The
You have to
rat
bug
with
it.
wings. But go ahead.
But I underestimated Robert Pattinson. However you pronounce his last
Robert
name.
Pattinson. Robert Pattinson. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I underestimated his performance. I really say he did a heck of a job as playing year one Batman, Bruce Wayne, an emo version of Bruce Wayne. I lost my family, but he did a good job. I did like the Penguin. Penguin, I was from the makeup to the performance. I have to say, Colin Farrell did a heck of a job. I couldn't even recognize him.
I mean, he's getting his own spinoff. I mean, he had to be doing something right. He's getting his own spinoff.
He deserves it.
Yeah.
You know, he had me cracking me up. What are you doing? Hey, I'm gonna do it. And I'm saying to myself, wait, this is the same guy that girls were losing their mind over a decade ago when he was in SWAT and everything else. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, and he looks, the makeup, like you said, it was just, I didn't even realize, like, it took me a minute, like, it still took a minute just to get my head around that that's him.
Right.
That was Colin Farrell. And I'm like, and of course, our boy played Commissioner Gordon up to the tilt.
Oh yes.
You know,
Oh, he's,
You know,
again.
a long way from Shaft. You know, when he was, yo, you kill my brother, you kill my brother. And I'm just
He
like,
was great. He was
man.
great in Shaft. I still think that
Yeah.
people should still talk about that. How good he was. And by the way, I was in Shaft.
Word.
Oh, really?
Oh really?
That club, if you watch that movie again, you know when they went to that club in Harlem, which is a historical club in Harlem that no longer exists, which is really sad. Yeah, they closed it down after that, actually. But yeah, if you look, you'll see me at the bar, and you'll see me with blonde hair.
Now I'm gonna go back to
So now you gotta go back to see it.
Now I
Look
gotta
for it.
look for Shaft.
But I don't want us to, because I do want to talk about some of the project stuff that you're doing, Eric, but I can't move forward since we're on this DC thing. I say this every time we talk about DC. DC animation is just so... So I just saw the, what was it, Batman and Superman Battle for Super Sons?
Yeah.
I just saw Legion. I just saw Legion of Superheroes.
Okay.
Just watched it.
How was that?
So this
I mean...
and anybody who gets it, who watches it,
Mhm.
make sure you stay for the end credits. There's the epilogue at the end.
Okay.
But it's basically you know, again, it's in the same league of the newer animated movies that have been coming out lately, in the same vein, and it basically is focused on Supergirl and her teaming up with the Legion of Superheroes. So without giving anything away, it's a really good storyline, really well written, great voice acting. Trust me, I highly recommend you get that. If you love the last animated DC film, you're gonna love this one.
I'm definitely gonna
It's
check
not
that
the
out.
ballpark.
Because you know what? Every time I try to play them and say, I think I'll watch it. And when I sit down and watch it, I'm like, bruh, I played myself. They knock it out the park each time. Now, it's interesting because, so they have the DC Showcase. Have you guys seen any of that?
Yeah.
So you saw the one with Superman, Shazam, and Return to Black Adam? You had to have seen that.
I have that in my collection. Are you kidding me?
Oh, okay. There you go. Then they had the Spectre, and then they had Green Arrow. So, and it's a
You know what, they
showcase,
have
so
like-
it's a collection of shorts all
They have
together.
at least now 30 showcases now. Like
Yeah.
if you're a collector, like I collect all the DC, so they've been putting them out, and then of the last couple times they put out segments. So now they have a large segment of DC showcase movies dated all the way back, like you said, starting with Black Adam, Superman, and Shazam, and the Spectre, Constantine,
Wow.
Blue Beetle. They even did a Blue Beetle that was paying homage to Spider-Man, the '60s Spider-Man.
Right.
Again, you have to watch it. Again, yeah, these showcases are are just really good, man. I'm like,
just
different
really,
artists,
really good.
different animators. Yeah. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely, it's really something to watch, man.
So what do you guys think of Black Adam being portrayed almost hero-like versus, because that's what they did. They didn't quite make him a hero, but they made him a hero. Versus Black Adam is supposed to be a villain. What do you guys think of that?
I think, because if you really think about it, I think the route is he only cares about his country, the protection of his country
in the film.
That's
because
he could care less about. He could care less about every other country. He just care about his people because of the torments and the torture that they've been through. So it's like, could you say he's more of an anti-hero besides a back and forth hero villain? I say he's the anti.
I mean, they made him somewhat of, but he really, as far as like source material, he's a villain. Like he doesn't care about his country, he cares about himself, his own power.
Well, as someone who was coming up, grew up in the 70s, who basically was watching Black Adam as a villain, and the progression as the years went on, him in we're talking about from like animated wise, like for the up to the last maybe 20-30 years, we've seen him as a villain. In the comic books of late, especially when he hooked up with the JSA in the latter years, him and Hawkman, him and Atom Smasher developing a bond, and it was a unique that they did it in the live action movie. He's become more of a hero. In the latest installment of the whole Crisis saga in DC, Black Adam played an integral role, without giving anything away. He played an intricate role where he was more or less like they geared him towards more like a hero. So I think you have certain characters that in comic book lore that for whatever reason, like people have like basically gravitated towards these characters. And you generally, if they were a villain, in some cases, if they were a villain, they eventually will become like an anti-hero to a point where they're like, okay, they saw the potential in Black Adam to make him an anti-hero. Because you can't make him a full-on hero. It just wouldn't gel right. But if you make him an anti-hero, where basically he walks that fine line, even in the movie, he walked that fine line. I mean, again, the way they wrote, I think they could have wrote it a little bit more to give him that little bit more darker edge. But I mean, come on, he was killing people. That's what I loved about the movie. They didn't hold back. I freaking love. But the thing is that I like the direction they were going, because they were telling you that, okay, he does have a little bit of a and then again, it's the way they wrote it in the movie for the live action movie. But I got a feeling that we're going to see other versions of Black Adam live action. Give it time, whether Dwayne is playing him or someone else is playing him, we're going to get a chance to see more of Black Adam, especially with him playing an intricate role like he did in the latest Crisis situation that happened in DC.
And speaking of that, I'm just waiting for them to do this guy right here. I'm sorry. I'm just waiting for them to do this guy right here. Please, James Gunn, do this guy. It must be done.
I can't see him. I can't see him not doing that. Yeah, I can't see him not doing it.
I mean, well, what do you guys think about Black Adam? What do you think, Venus?
Totally agree with the anti-hero perspective, but looking at all of our favorite superheroes or anti-heroes, I think it's when we see the flaws that make them so relatable, because we've all been a little selfish while helping someone else at some point. We all had our own motives at the end of the day, else we wouldn't have done it. So I think that's kind of what makes it resonate with the audience. So that's kind of one of the things. But also, you talk about how he's been represented over time. Every hero in all the comic books always has like spin-offs and different versions, and we get to like kind of pick and choose our own adventure, like what's our favorite spin-off. So I don't know, I think that's just like part of the artist's job.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've heard the term before, every villain thinks they're the hero because they think in their mind that they're doing something right, and other people are like, no, you're not. But I have to save my country. In order to save my country, I got to kill everybody else in order to save my country or to save us. Like basically, it's if you look at certain villains, even in whether it's Marvel, DC, a lot of them have a unique arc where they're doing it for a reason. They have a driven purpose, you know. And the bigger scheme of things is like you're the villain, but are you really the villain? It's been coming out more and more in different stories in comic book lore, like where the hero or the villain, you try to sympathize with the villain. Even with the Joker movie, they try to give you an understanding of his point of view of what, even though you know he's out there, he's crazy, but like with the last Joker movie that came out, they try to give you his point of view. And never did I thought in my lifetime that I would see a live action Joker movie where there's no Batman. I'm like, how would you do that? And I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like you said, it's through the years, people, it's up to the artist's interpretation of what they bring out in that character.
Well, this is a good transition because you're a director, you're a writer, you're a gaffer, you're everything. In storytelling, that's the trend now. The trend is I'm going to have a villain, but I'm not going to have a bad guy. And I'm going to develop even when you're acting something out, you do have some sort of motivation. You're motivated by this, and that. But they're really delving deep, almost where, to Dayveonne's point sometimes, well, can you really say they're a villain? That becomes a question now, because all perspective, to me, that's also kind of getting drawn out. How do you feel that as a story? Do you think people are doing too much of this? I need to explain and almost get you questioning your own morality with the character.
I think in most stories, especially as someone who's a writer, you want to be able to, for me, as I've done films and worked on film projects and with other writers and all, we try to find an impasse where, you want to be able to understand the villain. And then there's some villains that are just straight up, they have no moral code or anything. They're just straight villains.
Right.
So in some cases, we need to get back to that. But also, some of those villains have a mystique about them where you want to like, well, I don't know anything about this, person's past. And all. I mean, when I was growing up, it was like, with Dr. Doom, you never saw his face. You just knew that he had a mysterious past. The same with the rest of school. And so when you start unveiling, you start peeling the layers, it takes away from that villain where it's a little bit more. I like it where my villains are sometimes you don't know anything about it. You don't need to know his past. You need to know that this person is here to do damage. He's here to do harm. And it's up to the person, the hero, to find a way to stop him. Some of them, and also it depends on how you write the character. You can write it with a twist where you didn't see this coming. And I mean, I've seen writings where the whole time you're watching a film and you're watching this person that you consider the hero, and you end up finding that the hero was the villain. And stuff like that. I mean, I love like stories like that where you can really hit the crowd in your corner 1 minute, and the next minute. My idea of a perfect story is the kind of story that afterwards we can have a long discussion about it. We can have a debate about it, because you're like, well, what if? And even now, like the way like you got The Last of Us, and people are like, Joel's motivations, and even though people have played the game, they know, but he has a past and stuff like that. So again, I like it where if you write a good story, if you write a good film, if you write there's a good like piece. The whole idea is to get people to talk afterwards, to have a discussion. Whether and if it's a cut and dry story, sometimes you want to go into a movie without having to think. You want to go in the movie saying, I had a good time, it was a great movie, boom. But then there's those movies I like to go into where you're sitting down and you're discussing stuff. Like they just came out with the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, and people are saying that some people liked it, some people didn't, some people but a lot of people have discussions about it.
Right.
I'm sorry, the reason why I laughed is because as soon as you say M. Shyamalan, there's already going to be a split.
Well, the thing is I like about him, he gets you to talk. He gets you to have a conversation. In some cases, some people are like, but then he has hidden messages. Same with Jordan Peele. When he did, when he's done these last couple of films he's done, everybody ends up discussing the film afterwards. Right. The messages behind it. And you're like, wow, I didn't even think about it. Right. Now I got to go back and watch it. If you can make an audience member go back to watch a film because of something you missed or something you missed the bigger picture, it's just like The Usual Suspects. When The Usual Suspects came out, it's another great movie. Right. The whole time you're watching it and you're like, and without giving anything away for those people who've never seen The Usual Suspects, the ending was so twisted that you had to go back and now I got to go back and figure out how did they make this happen. I love stories like that to make you think, make you talk.
And I gotta say this to Inshallah, shout out. Your endings, we need to talk, but your premises are some of the best premises of the genre. Like the way he starts a film and sets everything up, almost flawless.
But I guarantee you, most of those movies are going to end up being cult classics.
Right.
Probably another 10, 20 more years.
Mm-hmm.
What we're discussing right now and saying, well, some of us are saying, well, I didn't understand it, but down the road, they're going to look at these films like, well, these are art. This was art. You got to understand why he was doing it. That's how we look at a lot of films. There's a lot of films that didn't get high acclaim or didn't get praise, but are now classic. Even stuff we grew up on, movies we can't. And, looking back then, you're like, wait, it only made that much in the box office? It didn't do that well? But yet, this is a classic movie.
Right.
But again, it's give it time and you let it sit and marinate and people talking and discussing about the movie and the way it was shot, the way it was done. Again, I'm a big film in this shot. I love film and I love how films are done, how the direction and I always watch the documentaries behind the scenes of how certain movies, even Star Wars, they were talking about how Lucas had one vision and he wanted to go in one direction and people were like, no, it's got to change. So we wouldn't have gotten the Star Wars that we see now, originally the George Lucas vision, we would have gotten a totally different Star Wars. Again, I think it's interesting when you see the process of filming and movies and you want to get your story out there, but you don't want to compromise what you wrote, but you want to also try to work with the people in your team because you want to put out something good.
Also, we're gonna, if you don't mind, we're gonna pause here. This will be part 1, and I would like to zero in a little bit on you on part 2, if you're up for it. And then also for everyone out there, because we're not there yet, but they're right on the cusp of Women's Month. Listen, Star Wars would not be Star Wars without George Lucas's wife at the time.
Yeah.
Because, a little quick on the story, because we got a couple seconds. Basically, he was having a hard time telling whatever story he wanted to tell. And you're right, we would have got a totally different Star Wars. All his buddies, Spielberg, all the whole crew, they watched it, they would like burn the negatives. Throw it in the trash. And he was like, nah, I gotta salvage this. And the wife was like, listen, give me the footage. Come on. Let me edit this. Let's work on this. Your strength is George Lucas's strength is as an editor.
Right.
Not a writer. So they sat and they edited, and now it's like one of the best films ever as far as sci-fi. All right, so we're going to end right here. If you're watching us live on Twitch, you can keep watching. We're just going to stay consistent. We're going to cut this off. You're watching on cable, you got to watch this next week. Sorry. Just a 2-weeker. If you're seeing this online, just click on the next video. You're watching GEEKCASTER.